this episode, I'm interviewed by our American friend Chris Gregory on his podcast, the Final Approach Podcast. He takes me through my journey to become a private pilot and talks to me about how I ended up owning my own flight school. Strap in, this one's going to be a good one.
Everybody, I am sitting with Simon Callis. So I know that you quit 3 times on your journey, but how did you get started?
So I think it went back to when I was a kid. I was always obsessed with motorbikes, cars, anything with an engine that I was obsessed with. But when I was working in the car garages, one of the parts guys, I think it was at the time, he was doing some flying lessons, and I sort of got a bit fascinated talking to him about his lessons. That sparked off something from when I was a kid. I'd been to Coventry Airport as a kid as well, looked around.
Now, how old were you whenever this was going on?
So I think when I went to Coventry Airport the first time, I was probably about 10. But then when I was in the garage, I was probably in my early 20s.
And had you flown?
No, I tell you what, I'd never even been on a plane. I'd never even been on a plane till I was 21. Okay?
No kidding.
Yeah, so the first time I went on a plane was to Mexico. So it was a 9 and a bit hour flight, or 10 hours, whatever it was, on my first flight. But I think I'd been telling my girlfriend at the time, who also worked at the garage, I'd been speaking to Ryan and he's doing his flying lessons, and she'd sort of covertly said, how do we go about this, da-da-da. She bought me a voucher to come to this flying school. Okay, but
was it Almat?
It was Almat Flying Club.
Okay.
I came here, I remember being really nervous about it.
What year was this?
2005, I think then.
So going on 20 years now.
Yeah.
All right.
2005. I went on my trial lesson. The guy I flew with, I still speak to today, and he was a great instructor. He was a bit wild, but he was a good guy, and he sort of enthused me about flying. But I couldn't afford it. I didn't have the time, so I did what I advise everybody not to do, is go and keep doing several trial lessons. I was doing like an ad hoc course without even not knowing what I was training towards. I knew nothing other than I liked being in the aeroplane. Very much just turning up and flying, and I just sort of plodded on like that for a bit. I sort of couldn't leave it alone, if that makes sense. Kept going back to it. Then I got to a point whereby I'd done it a bit more regularly, and I'd sort of got my head into doing the PPL.
So just real quick, I know some of you guys are not pilots. So PPL is private pilot license.
Correct, yeah.
Which is the second level, basically, above a LAPL, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, the LAPL kind of sits next to it. That's a recreational license. The PPL has slightly more options for people who want to go on to train.
Yeah, I think in the US, the LAPL would be the equivalent of a sport pilot.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened then was I carried on going. At 6 hours of flight training, I had a real emergency, and that put me off.
An air emergency?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
what happened?
We were taking off here at Coventry on runway 05, so we're heading out towards the motorway out that way. And as we were climbing out, there was a bit of a crosswind, so I remember the instructor, when this happened, was kind of leaning back, looking out the back window, seeing how I was tracking to the runway. And as we got up to about 600 feet from memory, the yoke started oscillating. And I didn't really know whether it was right or wrong, but then it started oscillating like that sort of distance. And I remember swearing, and he turned round and swore as well and goes, what's going on? I said, I don't know, can you take control? So we took control, and we climbed out to about 1,100 feet, made a turn back to the runway. As we turned back to the runway, I remember him idling the power back and the oscillation slowed down, so we just glided in, landed right on the end of the runway, and I remember feeling really relieved that we were back on the runway, and we've got these fire trucks following us down the runway. And anyway, evidently what had happened was the trim tab on the back of the elevator, the linkage had come adrift.
Oh my.
So the prop wash was blowing the trim tab up and down, and that was affecting the elevator. So it was something very simple but quite alarming. But I remember hearing the words Mayday, Mayday, Mayday at 600 feet and thinking this is about the worst time this could happen, we're dead, you know. And anyway, so that put me off for a bit. I eventually got to the point whereby I was sent first solo, and then I quit. and I don't really know why. I just I was so underconfident. I think I sort of thought to myself, I've ticked the box. I've flown an aeroplane by myself. I don't want to do it anymore. Anyway, I went back to do it again, and the airport closed. That's what happened on the second one. So this airport shut down temporarily for about 12 months when the council used to own it and operate it, and they had Thompson, which is now TUI, operating out of here. TUI pulled out, and we ended up not having the airport open, and I was so sort of stuck in my ways that I wanted to fly with this guy and I wanted to fly here. I just thought, I'm not going to do it anywhere else, so I didn't. So that was the second time. Then I had a problem with my medical. Final time, something really weird happened. So I had left, I'd gone through, out of the workshop in the garage, I'd gone through the management route. I got fed up with that, set up my own business. And part of that business was alloy wheel refurbishment for cars. And I turned up at this guy's house, and he had all these photos of this aeroplane that I recognised. And I said to him, did you used to fly at Almat? And he goes, yeah, I did. He goes, I still do. And I says, oh, they're back open again. He goes, yeah. So anyway, long story short, I ended up getting involved in repainting his aeroplane, which is the plane in the picture. And as a result of that, that took me 12 months in my spare time. As a result of that, I sort of said to him, look, I want a part of this aeroplane, I want to buy into it. So I did. And so I bought...
And what plane was it?
It's a 172.
Okay.
I bought into that aeroplane without a pilot's license, with the accountability now that I've spent some money on it, I need to do it. So I finished off. I still had that medical complication, so I ended up having a LAPL, not a PPL. I can now get that restriction lifted if I want to, so I could get a PPL now if I want to. But
so were you married by this time, or?
I had a long-term partner, and when I bought the aeroplane, we just had our kids.
Wow! So you had to be pretty serious to just have a kid on the ground, and
well, I got twins, so we'd had two, and I was just like, you know what? And it was only a small share, so I thought it's not that big a risk, but it was accountability I needed to make sure I did it.
Okay.
And that's kind of what forced me to finish. And that along, I think I had some good friends at the time that were supporting me through it as well, and I got it done.
So with your mechanical background, are you also an AMP or?
No, I don't do any sort of maintenance on the aeroplane or anything like that.
And why not? Is that a big leap from cars to planes?
I don't know is the answer. I think there are licensed engineers and there are unlicensed engineers. I think I could be an unlicensed engineer under the supervision of a licensed one. I don't know, but it's not really anything I've ever thought about doing, if I'm being honest. I very much decided when I was in the workshop that I'd seen guys that were my age now and older that were tired of working on stuff, bad backs, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. How many planes do you own now?
I still own the share in that one. All the planes we have here are leased. So I've got 7 aeroplanes now here. So I've got the choice of them. We just took an electric aeroplane on as well. So we've got the UK's first certified electric trainer.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow, how is that?
It's great. It's been leased to us by a company called Neboer, and they're promoting electric flight. And we're working with them to help promote this product.
Is it another rating besides a single engine?
No, it works on a single engine rating, but its difference is training. So
I'll be dang.
So you could use it as part of your course, but it doesn't have the range yet. In order, you could do a whole course.
How is the power on it for takeoff and stuff?
It's quite talky. It's good, to be honest, but it's just the range. So 50 minutes is as much as you could do in it. For a safe contingency, we say 30. So,
and what kind of payload?
600 kilo max takeoff weight, so you've got 172 kilos usable.
And you don't have to worry about the fuel.
Yeah, well, there's that, and also because you don't have to calculate anything other than what the occupants' weight are.
Right.
So it's quite interesting.
That's very cool. So how did you come to own a flight school?
That's another story. So obviously the plane that I bought a share in was leased here for the school to use, and I was using it anyway. I'd always been friends with the people at Almat since I'd started, and they, like most flying schools, they go through bad times, good times. Glyn at the time, the owner, was having a bit of a rough time of it. He was thinking of selling, and he had a sale which fell through, And at that time, I was sort of getting a bit bored of what I was doing, if I'm honest. So I'd gone through the career in the dealership, done 8 years in the business, and I just thought I'd had enough of the motor trade in general, and I wanted to do something different, but I didn't know what it was. And one thing I always was fascinated with the flying school was, even as a student, I liked to help out and talk to people, and I thought this must be really nice, help people get to where they need to go with the training. And I remember saying to Glyn, this is a great business to be involved in. And he sort of said to me, look, it's never going to make you loads of money. It's not that type of business. There's a joke in aviation, how do you make £1 million in aviation? Start with 2.
Right.
But I still love the fact that I could help people. So when his sale fell through, I rang him up and I said, look, I'm interested. He was like, okay, let's talk. And we did. And within a matter of weeks, it was all done.
Wow.
And we set up Almat Flying Academy. And one thing I'd sort of looked at was my journey, how long it took me to do it, how many problems I had. I wanted to change that. I wanted to give people the information they need so that if they're not ready, they don't make the mistakes I did. They wait till the time's better.
And by listening to your podcast, the Student Pilot podcast, you really do. You spend a lot of time with these people before you put them behind a
absolutely.
yoke.
And I think that's really important. It is really important because it's a massive decision. Most people are spending in the region of about 17 grand to get a PPL at the moment on average hours and all the rest of it. Not minimum, but, average hours. And, that's car money. If you go into a car dealership, they don't go, do you want to buy it? No, or go away. They spend hours with you, go talking through stuff. And I looked at it on that basis. Why isn't there that level of customer service in general aviation? And I think it's largely down to the fact that time is money, obviously. That's why I do the podcast, because I can't spend as much time as I'd like to with people.
Sure.
So the podcast gets my message out there. What I also do is give people a free Learn to Fly guide, which is about 24 pages of all the information they need about the different licenses, the different paths, the things we do. So that when they do come to see me, a lot of them already feel like they know me anyway. And then it's more a case of let's spend an hour going through some extra bits of information and just answering your questions.
Sure.
And I can help assess where they're at. And if I think it's not right for them, I'll tell them. If I think it is, I'll help them get there.
So what would be the range in the UK, like from the very cheapest to the most expensive? Would you be £15,000 to £30,000?
Aviation pricing varies across the country.
Okay.
And there's a reason for it. It depends on the overheads of the business for a start. So some airports charge a lot more money to be there. Depends on the fleet of aircraft, whether you own those aircraft or lease those aircraft. But from experience, cheap is not better.
Sure, of course not. Yeah.
So what I would say is, if looking at the pricing and all the rest of it and the contingency hours that you need, if you plan for 17,000 in 2024 on a 2-seat aircraft with 60 hours instead of 45, so that's what the average person takes across the UK, multiple exam attempts, you're going to be in that sort of ballpark.
Okay, well that's not bad. I thought it would be more.
Yeah, I mean, if you go on a 4-seater, it's going to be more like 20,000 at 60 hours.
Yeah, but still, it's not bad.
It's but yet I've seen people spend a lot more money than that, and I've seen people come here that have spent that money already before they even start. So
unfortunately, I've seen flight schools that take advantage.
But I think you've got to have that level of responsibility where you say to people, like, if somebody comes in and says, look, I can only afford to spend 300 quid a month on flight training, that's going to get them one lesson and a few bits of ground school. There's no point, right? So I'll say to them, come back when the time's better, when you've got a better financial situation, save up some cash. Or if they do want to do it, I'm going to tell them why they shouldn't, and it's up to them,
Sure.
But our job is to mentor them through the course. And if we see a problem, say, look, you're taking a lot longer than we thought you. Is there anything that we can do to help you? Or is there anything you want to tell us about the way you learn? Or anything? There's lots of reasons.
So do you guys, in the UK, do they have a check ride when it's all said and done?
Yeah, so that we call that a skills test in the UK. So same thing. So it's a briefing on the ground, check your planning, check the aircraft documents, go up in the aircraft, a navigation route, diversions, general handling, emergencies. Then they do a bit of under the hood stuff, so on the instruments. Then it's a session of circuits and a debrief afterwards. So that usually takes about 2 hours,
Okay. Yeah. And so do you provide that through Almat as well?
Yeah, it's all done in-house, but the examiners are generally, they're considered external, so it's external people coming in.
Oh, okay.
So we do have in-house examiners, as in people who have the qualification, but they are removed from,
They don't examine their students.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So there is a rule in the UK, which is they can't do, if they've done more than 25% of their training, they can't examine them.
Probably a good rule.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so if I owned a plane
Yeah.
in the UK
Yeah.
and I wanted to go fly to Glasgow, could I just go out there, call the tower and go?
What, on your, an FAA license or?
Well, if I was a UK approved PPL,
Okay. Yeah, generally. So obviously, weather conditions aside, as long as the weather's good enough, so as long as you conform to the rules of the air, and you have prior permission to go to the places you go into, and permission to cross airspace if you need to, yeah, it's fine.
and so prior permission, so I would have to call the airport that I'm going to and say, hey, I'm coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. Most airports require that, so that they know you're coming, and also if anything goes wrong, they've got that 30 minutes where they think, okay, he's been 30 minutes longer than when he should have been. Do we need to start looking for this guy? So
in the U.S. we call it flight following, and we're in constant radio contact. If you go on a VFR flight, so in the U.S. if I decide I'm going to fly to, let's say I'm going to fly to Harrisonville, it's 100 miles.
Yeah.
I open my hangar, pull my plane out, and I fly to Harrisonville.
Yeah.
I don't tell anybody. I don't call anybody.
Okay.
Nobody has to know.
Yeah.
But I can also go up and I can call what they call like Kansas City station.
Yeah.
And report that I'm coming, ask for flight following. They give me a transponder code.
Yeah.
So in the UK, can you fly without telling anybody?
Yeah, so if you're in Class G airspace, that's uncontrolled airspace, you don't necessarily have to talk to anybody. It depends on where you depart and where you're going to. So some airfields, if it's a private airstrip, they might have safety comm or something like that, but it might be you don't talk to anybody.
Okay.
But it's generally good airmanship to talk to somebody. In that instance, you would have a conspicuity squawk code. I'm not 100% sure what flight following offers you in terms of service, but we can get services like traffic service, whereby, for example, if I was talking to Birmingham Radar, I could say I request a traffic service, and then they will give me information about other aeroplanes to keep you safe.
Sure.
So there's that sort of service you can get. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So an airplane in the UK will still free you up quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of airspace in the UK, unfortunately, but there are places where, if you go down to the southwest, it's quite open. So. But I've never flown in the US, so I've got nothing to compare. You've been lucky because you've flown here as well, haven't you?
Last time I was here, I actually rented an airplane from you.
Yeah.
And it was, folks, if you ever come to England and have a chance to lease an airplane, so when I travel to a foreign country, if it's doable, if I have the time, then I try to rent a plane.
Absolutely, yeah, it's good. I need to do that. I need to go and fly in a different country. I've only ever flown to France, and that, unfortunately, the limitations on the LAPL mean you can't go to Europe. So I had to do that under instruction to make it legal. So
But, well, I had to go under instruction with yours. So I flew left seat, but I did have an instructor with me.
It's good fun, though, isn't it? Trying different things.
And I found your radio to be extremely difficult because of the accent. So trying to understand what the tower was saying through the headset, I would have been in trouble. I would have kept saying, "Would you please repeat?"
Yeah, I had the same difficulty in France because, oddly enough, they were talking French to French pilots and English to English ones very quickly with a strong French accent, and I'd
that's tough.
Yeah.
So, how old are your kids now?
They've just turned 10.
10.
So they're getting to an age where I'm considering taking them flying.
Okay, so they haven't been yet.
No, because they have ADHD, so they're quite difficult to manage depending what their mood is. So the thought of taking two kids like that in an aeroplane doesn't fill me with much joy. In fact, most car journeys are fairly hectic. So.
And how about your wife?
She's been up about 3 times, but she's not a keen flyer.
So she didn't enjoy it?
No. I think as she's got older, she's got more worried about flying.
So what are your plans for your flight school?
This airport here has been earmarked for a battery gigafactory for electric vehicles, which, it's a shame because this airfield has one of the best runways in the UK.
And it's so long and
yeah, exactly. So
and how long has that been in the works?
Years.
So do you think it will happen?
I don't know whether that will happen, but something's probably going to happen. So at the minute, we're in talks with various different people over potentially moving. What I'd like is potentially 2 small schools. So 2 schools with 3-4 aircraft in each.
Okay.
So we've got bases we can travel between, we can move the staff around. And I want to get into more sustainable aviation, so I want to push this electric aircraft and look at getting something more fuel efficient, because the Pipistrel that we're using has a Rotax engine counterpart with glass cockpit and all sorts of stuff in it.
Right.
So if we can use those as a pair, it'll be really good as a training tool.
So you plan on forging ahead no matter what then? You're
determined.
doing what you like to do.
You got to. I had a particularly bad journey with this flight school because I started out just before lockdown, obviously with COVID.
Oh, okay. So you just started this in like 2019.
Yeah, towards January 2019 is when I started here.
Okay.
So we went pretty much after a year we were in lockdown. And we had all that to deal with, but you know what? We didn't sit around moping. One of the things we did do in lockdown, which I was quite pleased with, we kept talking to each other, and we decided to write out to our students and say, look, what do we do really badly? What do we do really well? What do you want us to start and stop doing? What are your problems? And they came back with tons of stuff, and we were like, great, we'll work on this. So we did. We created an online question bank for the exams. We created some video ground schools for people because they wanted video ground schools. We designed our fast track course, which is you can do it in 3 to 6 months or 9 to 12 months. We designed that off the back of lockdown and what the people told us. So
you were very, very progressive and got a lot done.
Got it, yeah. And the same now, there's lots of problems in aviation in the UK. There's a pilot shortage. I'm sure it's probably hitting you in America as well. It means there's no instructors.
Right.
So we decided about a year ago to start training our own instructors.
So that leads me to the question of why Simon is not an instructor.
My job here is to run the business and inspire the people to come and do better. And I think if I start instructing as well, that's going to take away from doing that. I don't think I've got the capacity to do what I do and do that and do well at both. If that makes sense.
Sure.
So maybe in the future, but I think it'll be just more something to do for me personally rather than I'm going to instruct every day, if that makes sense.
Okay. So do you crave flying hours?
I enjoy flying, but I've got to be honest, I've never enjoyed flying on my own. I find it a bit boring.
Okay, yeah.
I like flying, but it's a sociable thing. So I try and go flying with friends. And as you know, everybody, when you get your pilot's license, says, I'll come flying with you. And then about 2 out of those people actually do it. So, and half of that is because they're too scared, they don't admit it. Or when you tell them how much it costs, they're like, wow, have I got to put some money into that? So yeah, it's one of those things that I enjoy flying, but I just enjoy what I do.
Okay.
And that's part of it. So
Sure.
It's not just about the flying, it's about helping people. And I love seeing the difference it makes from people who you talk to in the first instance. And I remember one of my friends now, she was, I spoke to her on and off. This was in lockdown, we had loads of times. We had about 8 phone calls, right?
Was this Billy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to talk about learning to fly. And she was like, I'm not sure I can do that, I'm not sure I can do that. And now she's got a license, she comes on flyouts all the time. So it's nice to see people's confidence go with it.
Oh yeah.
So it's
good.
good.
And you can hear it through the podcast how she's in love with flying, isn't she?
Yeah, she loves it. Yeah, she does. And there's other friends that I've flown with that are now airline pilots. So
right.
It's like you come this long down the journey and you see people who have gone from being at the same level to you as taking you on holiday level. So it's great.
Yeah, that is really fantastic.
Yeah.
So. Getting back to your flying, apart from the trim tab coming undone, and have you ever had any really close calls or anything that just scared you to death?
One lesson that scared me to death when, and this was with the guy who I had the emergency with, and he was, because I didn't fly very often, he wasn't very good at remembering what he taught me, and he never really read your notes and stuff. It wasn't great, but I just liked flying with him. We were doing stalling. And we were doing power on stalls, and he thought he'd brief me on spin avoidance, and I didn't even know it was a thing. I didn't know what a spin was, let alone it could happen, Anyway, we were in I think it's a 152 or 150. Anyway, I did this full power stall, and as you expect, the wing drops. Anyway, as the wing dropped, I put full right aileron in, and then as the nose dropped and it entered the spin, I pulled back. So before you know it, we're in a fully developed spin. Luckily, we were pretty high up, and I'm holding it in the spin because I don't know what I'm doing, you know. And this guy's really cool as a cucumber. He's like, yeah. So he pulls the power out and he goes, just push forward. And I can't even speak, let alone do anything else. So we're spinning round, and eventually he goes, I have control, and he sorted it out within, you know, a few seconds.
Right.
And I'm like, what happened there? I thought we were dead. He goes, well, I told you about this. So that scared me.
And what about crop dusting in the UK? Is that a thing?
No, I wish it was.
So it doesn't happen?
Yeah, it doesn't happen, no. Well, not to my knowledge anyway. It looks great.
Oh man, the crop dusters around us are just, they're thick.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
Well, they're air tractors, isn't it?
Air tractors.
Yeah. But they're high performance, aren't they?
Oh yeah. And massive amount of weight, and you know, these guys are flying like they have nothing to live for, you know.
Yeah. I've seen the videos, and I'm like, I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
But they're single seaters, aren't they?
Oh yeah. They're single seaters, and they're, you know, and they're all kitted up with a helmet. They look like they're ready for a crash.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Probably because they are.
Yeah, probably because they are. We didn't do the dad joke, and you didn't teach me nothing.
So I do a pilot joke. It's not a very good one, but I heard it the other day. What's the difference between God and a pilot?
Tell me.
God doesn't think he's a pilot.
Farriers tell that one about veterinarians, but that's correct. That's one. But how about teaching me something?
Teaching you something? What could I teach you?
Teach me how to start and take off an electric airplane.
Okay, so an electric aeroplane, I'm actually going to go and show you this electric plane before you go. But
nice.
It's actually very, very simple. Okay, starting it is a case of turning on the master switch. You have 4 master switches. You have one for the battery, one for the avionics, one for the inverter, I think, and one for the actual motor. Okay. And then starting it is as simple as pushing the power lever forward. It's like have you driven a start-stop car?
I have not.
Okay, so in the UK, start-stop's a big thing for emissions. So the car, when you pull...
Oh, yes. So the one I'm renting right now, every time, the first time I stopped at the stoplight, I'm like, oh, it just died. But then it's supposed to.
So you fly it like that. So when you get on the runway and you're waiting for your clearance, you pull it to idle, the prop stops. So when you're sat on the runway, it looks like you've switched it off, but you haven't. As soon as you put the lever in, it goes. So it's that simple.
Oh, my.
It's that simple.
All right. Well, awesome. You've been an amazing guest, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time on a busy time of life. And
thank you for visiting us in the UK again. It's been great.
If you like this episode, please like, subscribe and ding the bell to receive notifications of the next episode.